So speaking of resolutions, if you had a New Year's resolution to play more guitar, then why not start playing the pentatonic scale a bit more? Because there are very good reasons for this. Even though the pentatonic scale is sometimes marketed as the perfect beginner scale and all of that, it is also the most versatile scale in the world, arguably. Simply because of the reason you can do whatever you want with it. You can play slow, you can play fast, you can play inside, you can definitely play outside. And it's almost like an arpeggio, but that's easy to play. Because these 5 notes contained within the pentatonic scale are so strong. In fact, if you remove one of them, it becomes like a 4-note arpeggio. So having said all of this, I think we are ready to dive into some pentatonics. You've been playing guitar for 6 months. That's awesome, Metal Rocks. And still haven't started on the pentatonic scale yet. Well, I'd say that's pretty good timing, you know. You don't have to start with learning a scale immediately. Some people prefer to just, get started with some chords, maybe learn a few songs or some simple riffs. But I think that's perfect timing for you then. We should definitely do the pentatonic scale now, since you've been playing for 6 months and you're ready for it. And I'm sure we have others who are in a similar situation. So here's the deal. A lot of time, we hear people who practice and play the pentatonic scale this way. In fact, this is the first box of the links you will find below the video. So if you check out the first link, it's exactly this scale. So is there anything wrong with playing it up and down like this? Not really, if you're exploring that first scale box. But there are some issues you might encounter if you think this is the way to play a scale. Simply because this kind of playing has no musical value. Quite the opposite. It sounds like someone who's playing the scale for the first time. So this is not how you want to spend your time with the pentatonic scale. You want to do different stuff with it. So what I suggest you do once you've gotten familiar with this very first position is to not play it up and down. Instead, what I do when learning a new scale is to just play 2 or maybe 3 notes from the scale. Even if it's like a 7-note scale, this is a 5-note scale, but even if it's a 7-note scale, I just play like a few notes from it and try to get a feel for those notes and see if I can connect with them somehow. Now that's a fancy way of saying, if I can just play anything that sounds cool with it. Because if you can do that, that's when you start to learn a scale. Prior to this stage, you've just been, playing the dots up and down. That's not really worth anything, neither to you nor musically. But if you can play just a few of those dots and make it sound like something that sounds cool to you, then you are making your first steps towards a personal connection with this scale. And that's really cool. Cool, Hira. You've been playing for 1 year. That's awesome. So, let me just show you quickly how that could be done. We're in the A minor pentatonic here, which means we can play the low A string and hear that as our harmony. This is super important because with this harmony, you can play the notes in any order and it's still going to sound like the A minor pentatonic scale on the 5th fret here. If you don't hear this as your root note, then you perhaps want to be playing the scale starting from the root note like this, and we're back into that old boring way of playing it. So we want to hear this root note while we explore the scale. Now when we have this root note, it means we can play any combination of notes contained within this first box. So let's try it. Okay, so what did I do there? Pretty interesting. In fact, I cheated. I added 1 note that wasn't in the box. But the whole point here is I'm just playing a few notes contained within this first box, and all of a sudden it sounds musical. To me, that's pretty much everything. Awesome. We have Scott Petri here. Good to have you, man. I do recognize you from Facebook, I believe. So, this is awesome. You you're now playing music. You're not playing a scale up and down. Try it. It's just 7 here on the D string, 5 on the G string, and then 7 on the G string. So we play that open A string, it's the 5th string, and we add those. I even slide up to that first note, but you don't need to do that. You can just do it. Whoops, don't do that. Right? So this is cool. And any combination of notes is fine. Notice how I haven't even played all the notes in the pentatonic scale, and it sounds cool. As opposed to, once again, this doesn't sound cool to me, okay? So this is just to make you think a little bit. Doesn't mean you have to throw anything in the garbage that you've practiced previously. It's just to help you a little bit with scales, because a lot of people struggle with theory scales, like how do I memorize a scale and how do I learn to play a new scale and all of that. And most of the time it goes down to like a misconception that you learn scales by memorizing lots of dots, but that's so wrong, because then it's like, okay, now I'm going to show you that I've memorized all my dots, you know, and no one wants to listen to those dots, and you're not doing yourself a favor there. So again, find a backing track or just hit that low A note and see if you can. Cool. Now, Scott Petri is my man who does all the live streams on Facebook. Keep up the awesome work, by the way. So yes, and I know that you also use the pentatonic scale a lot, and it's just such a melodic scale, and you can pretty much never go wrong if you use it as your foundation to build melodies. And that's exactly what I'm trying to show you here. I'm here on the 5th fret. I'm not playing all those dots. If you want the dots, if you want the full position, you're going to find it in that link, first link I provided below, but you don't need them. They are good for visualizing the notes in this particular key of A minor. But once you sort of see where your options are, don't keep on playing all those options. You don't need to constantly show us that you know where the dots are. Quite the opposite. Don't show us. So exactly, Scott. And this specific scale, the pentatonic scale, can really open up the doors to a lot of modes. And in fact, that's one of the things I intended to cover as our last point in this little mini quick tutorial. But I think you got my point now, right? You can definitely have a look at the first box of the pentatonic scale if you haven't done so yet. There's a link below. However, once you've sort of seen where you can put your fingers there, don't just put your fingers there because you can. Instead, try to find a short selection of notes there and see if you can find some melody going. Anything that you can connect with. You know, just hitting that A note and then do bend it. That's rock and roll to me. You know, there's nothing wrong with this. I'd much rather listen to that than this, you know? Especially if we have like a groove. You know, that's rock and roll. The other, you know, playing up and down, that's just burping theory. Okay, I think you got my point now. One World, hello, what's up? Jason, good morning, thank you. Exactly, a lot of musicians made a living playing this scale. Okay, so the number 2 question, I get a lot about the, you know, in general about playing, but definitely specifically to this scale as well, is how do I sort of expand the fretboard? How do I play all over the fretboard as opposed to just playing in one specific box? And I know a lot of people are struggling with this. And it goes down to many things. First of all, a lot of you intermediate or advanced players who've already learned a lot of licks in this first box. You know, you're gonna definitely lean towards playing in your kind of home position where you have all those licks, and it's gonna be hard for you to sort of stray from this place where you know all that good musical content. So how do you do that? And if you are a beginner, how can you sort of avoid getting to that point? So what I like to do is to present the adjacent pentatonic scale box. So basically, we have this first pentatonic box, which is the most common one. It's the one we typically start with because all the notes are kind of laid out evenly. You don't have to move your index finger. All the notes are there. So most people start with this one. Then we have the second pentatonic box. And if you click the second link in the description, you're going to find that box. And I guess I'll just play it the boring way. So you have the A note. Those are the notes in that box. And here are the notes in the first box. And you'll notice that these two boxes, they have some common ground, right? They are adjacent, which means they're sort of back to back there. And they share all the notes contained in this region. So if you're super advanced and you want to do like stretching, you can do that. Not something I recommend. But it also means there's always a quick path in between those two boxes. And this is kind of where I want to get at, because this is critical. So instead, once again, of kind of burping all that theory and attempt to play this box up and down, doing like that. That's fine, if you're starting out, but it really, again, has no musical value. Instead of doing that, why don't you, after having learned these boxes and after having visualized them, see if there's a way you can go in between the boxes, like on any random string. Let's choose a G string here. So I showed you this this was my starting melody. What if I can add that second box? Okay, there I did a position switch. So if you break this down, pause the video, and you're gonna notice that I slid up into this second box, which you can find the link to. Okay, so I've moved in between those boxes, and I'm now well on my way to start moving around the fretboard. Because what I can do from this point is I can either go back to familiar grounds there, just do a slide, or I can play something in the next box because I'm there now, right? So that's pretty convenient to not just keep on playing there. And we're all of a sudden starting to explore the fretboard here. So just to recap a little bit here, what I've done is I've given you two adjacent pentatonic scale boxes, and I've showed you some examples of how you can move in between those. However, bear in mind that the pentatonic box, where penta stands for 5, only has 5 notes, and it only has really 5 different positions, and then it repeats. So I've already showed you 2 out of 5 positions. That means with these 2 boxes, we've learned more than, oh, help me out here, I think 40% of the entire fretboard where you can play the pentatonic scale. So just in these couple of minutes where I've spoken about this, we've managed to cover like 40% of the entire fretboard using the pentatonic scale. So this is a good approach if you want to explore the moving around horizontally on the fretboard. And it is definitely a very musical and melodic way of doing it. A very non-scalar, non-boring theory way of doing it. Exactly, Hyra. We're playing it horizontally. So let me give you some more examples here. I'm going to tell you when I switch between the boxes. So I'll start with the first box. Let's move up to... This is the second box. Let's move back. move back. Let's move up. Let's move back. And move up. Okay, and so forth. I end up playing too fast. I always do that when I'm nervous. But anyway, there you have them. I was kind of practicing back and forth. Sometimes I played slow and sometimes I played fast. Tempo doesn't really matter here. It's the concept that you need to sort of grasp. That we have this root note. Since we're hearing A as our root note, we're good. We can practice the pentatonic scale and we can choose whichever notes we want from it. We don't have to play it up and down the whole scale. And this has a major advantage as you're all of a sudden practicing in a musical way as opposed to just, playing a bunch of dots that you see on a scale diagram. So I'm trying to make a point here. I'm trying to hammer a point. so hopefully you guys can see where I'm getting at with this. You can of course apply this. You can apply it to any scale, learning any scale. In fact, it's definitely, I would say, the best way of doing it. Again, just try to visualize where those notes are. As soon as you're done visualizing, you no longer need or you shouldn't any longer play all the notes. You should instead try to make something melodic out of just a small selection of notes. Okay. So let's see if I, just for fun, could go through a whole bunch of other positions, and you can see how I can work my way around the whole fretboard. I haven't given you all the positions here. If you want them, you can just go to the scale generator at the GMC website. But it could sound something like this. And I'm back up here in the first position. So you can definitely jam around once you start to visualize the different paths in between those boxes. And again, nowhere did you hear me do this kind of... Again, that's just a way of kind of visualizing all the notes, but you shouldn't really play them like that when you're performing. I'm done now repeating this. You're not going to hear me say this anymore in this session. So just a final point I wanted to make in case we have some more advanced players still watching here. Finally, I want to say that the pentatonic scale, really, even if you're advanced, chances are you haven't explored it fully. There's just so much you can do with it. And one thing I like to do is while having this pentatonic scale as my foundation, I play all 12 notes that exist in Western music and just try to make it sound melodic and interesting and sort of as an exercise. But when I jam, this is typically something I will do after a while when I've explored all the obvious melodic options and I just want to throw in some tension and I want to try to break the boundaries a little bit and do something more adventurous. I will then typically try to go outside of any scale I'm playing in. And the pentatonic scale is such a good place to start with, again, because the pentatonic scale has almost exclusively strong notes. We're just playing 5 notes out of those 12 possible notes. And most of the time, those 5 notes are going to sound really, really good. So they are good notes to have as your kind of landing point, like target notes. And if you want to stray from them, you can avoid them and then go back into them. And that's what I'm going to show you now. So if you have, again, you're hearing this A note as your harmony, we can stay within the pentatonic scale and it sounds familiar, right? So that's all within the pentatonic scale, but with a bit of bending. But what if we start started adding some outside notes. Okay, so that was the major third. I was adding that on the sixth fret G string. It adds this kind of countryish major pentatonic vibe. Let's try another one. That's an obvious one. That's the flat fifth. So we have it on the 7th fret G string. Let's combine that with a major third. Okay, once again, I'm having those 5 pentatonic notes as my strong foundation, and I'm throwing in all these outside notes. And to me, it still sounds pretty cool. It doesn't sound like I'm doing just totally off, right? It sounds and it is because I'm just lightly touching upon those notes, giving it a bit of color, but then immediately going back to my familiar ground there, the pentatonic scale. So let's add another note. Let's add the Dorian note. We have it there on the 7th fret B string. Oh, pardon me, the last note I might have given you the wrong fret. So I was playing the flat 5th, which is on the 8th fret G string, okay? Now I'm doing the Dorian note, or the major 6, which is on the 7th fret B string there. Sorry for any confusion there. Let's combine it with the 2 previous notes, so we have 3 outside notes now. Okay, we have the major 3rd, we have that flat 5th, and we have the Dorian, or major 6. So it still sounds pretty cool to me. This is getting interesting to me now because it shows that we can add all these outside notes. And in fact, I'm going to go through all of the notes available, and hopefully that'll prove that you don't even need to know what the notes are called theory-wise. You can just play outside notes that are outside from the pentatonic scale, and that's going to be pretty cool in terms of adding color. So let's do another one. Let's do the minor 6. So this is going to sound really wacky in combination with the major 6, or the Dorian note, which we just did. So I'm going to try that. So I'm pretty much adding a chromatic run there. I'm doing the 5th, which is in the pentatonic scale. I'm doing the minor 6, which is outside, and then I'm doing the major 6, which was the previous one, the Dorian note, and then I'm here at the minor 7th, which is part of the pentatonic scale. So we are doing 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. Okay, so I've added 4 outside notes. Let me try adding them all again together. Okay, so 4 notes. So we covered a whole bunch of them now. We only have 3 notes left to add, and then we've added all 12 notes that exist in Western music. It's pretty cool. So we're pretty much almost playing chromatically now, just random any note, but still we're making it sound melodic and musical thanks to this pentatonic scale, which is constantly in as our foundation. It's constantly the basis of what you're hearing. So I've taken you here from just how you can get started with the pentatonic scale, just how you can learn the scale in a melodic and musical way, to how you can become super advanced with it, just adding what is going to turn out to be pretty much random notes as long as you see that pentatonic scale as your foundation. So what notes do we have left? We have an easy one, which is the second. Okay, so it's here on the 7th fret E string. It doesn't really sound bad. You don't have to work that hard to make it fit. So if I play so there I added all 5 notes in a long run. Okay, so let me just finish this with 2 more notes and we're done. We've done all of them. So we have the minor second now, which you can play here on the 6th fret E string. And this one I find a little tricky to, well, we can do it like a Phrygian thing. Doesn't really sound like rock and roll. That sounds more like metal to me. But we can make it sound more rock and roll if we do it chromatically. So I'm gonna add it in combination with the second note, which we added just before. So that sounds more rock and roll. So that chromatic thing all of a sudden turns it into rock and roll. If we just emphasize that minor second, it sounds kind of out. So yeah. So we just have 1 note left, and I don't know which one it is. Yes, of course, it's the major 7. That's the last note. That's the note that is just before the root note. Oof, that can sound crazy on its own as well. Again, I would add this as a passing note, so we move down chromatically. Okay, so I've added all notes now. They're all in here. So now I'm just gonna jam around and I'm gonna add all those notes, and they are 12 notes out of 12 available notes. Of course, I'm not playing the notes like this, right? I'm not playing them in that order, because then it just would sound like an exercise. I'm just lightly adding them upon this pentatonic scale, and it sounds pretty cool to my ears. Okay, so I should probably stop there. I'm seeing way too many poo emojis now. But anyhow, this is, I think, it's pretty interesting exercise, because it shows you that you don't have to go through extensive theory guides and this and that. Just use like a scale you're familiar with and grab the outside notes and see if you can make it work. Then all of a sudden, you're making use of all the available modes there and just about any harmony you can think of. Kind of randomly, but still not randomly, because to me, it's much better to not actually know what the notes are called, but still play them in a musical way, than the opposite, which is much more common. Basically, people who know all the theory, but they can't really play those scales in a musical way. If you're doing it this way, you're spending your time on the musical part of things and not the theory part of things. And again, it's pretty obvious which one is going to give you musical results, right? And that's what we want when we play the guitar. We want to play music, not burp up theory. Cool. So we had a question there. If you guys want to shoot a question, now is a good time. This is pretty much what I wanted to cover. I wanted to take you from really kind of simple to more advanced, and hopefully it makes sense. So let's see. How to do an octave note. Okay, so if you look at the first scale diagram I showed you, you're going to see that we have the root note there on the 5th fret, low E string, and we have the same root note, the A note, on the D string as well. So there you have your octave shape. And you also have it up here on the thinnest string, on the 5th string. So that's octave shape. And this can be good in order to understand how to move these patterns around to different keys. So if you want to move like this first position up to the B key, or the B minor pentatonic key, you can move it up so that the root note is not on the A note, but rather on the B note. And you'll be playing in the B minor pentatonic scale. And then, of course, the adjacent position, which I showed you, is sort of gonna follow up. So it's still gonna be adjacent, and it's just gonna move up like 2 frets. The West Coast pentatonic in the 80s. Which one of them? I doubt using all the notes was something that was oftenly used, but mixing in some major notes like the major 3rd or the major 6th, yeah, for sure, it could be that way. Oh, that's an interesting one. If you grow a mullet, is it more easier to play the Mixolydian scales? What I've heard is some haircuts make it much easier to understand, like the 7-note scales or 8-note scales that have a large interval. And this pretty much goes down to heavy metal people having their hair fall in front of their eyes, so they can't see where they put their fingers. So if you do grow a haircut that sort of allows you to see, then that's gonna help. Just kidding. You asked for it though. Okay, so let's see here. Sounded like a Guthrie Govan around the last one. Yeah, exactly, Scott. If you can weave in these chromatic and make it sound melodic, then you're probably definitely approaching Guthrie territory there. And yeah, it's just, I mean, if you have the technique and you can just give them like a split second in an otherwise melodic solo, it's gonna add really cool color. And yeah, it's a lot of fun too. Yeah, sometimes that's true, Scott. Sometimes haircuts help you feel cool. For me, having hats help me feel cool, because then I don't need to show my bald spot, which is somewhere around here. So it works. Plus, I can clearly see my fretboard. That's also a huge advantage. Cool. So I'm just gonna jam a little bit more, and you can shoot if you have more haircut questions or whatever you want to ask about. Well, there's a good one. Your fingers don't move that fast. Well, you don't have the right haircut. That's what we were speaking about. No, but fingers moving fast is not in itself desirable, of course. However, having a technique that allows you to play in control and being relaxed, whether you're doing it fast or slow, is very desirable. So, if I'm gonna try to put this in plain English, there's a fast way if you want to get your fingers moving quickly, and that's like focusing on just a few patterns and pretty much become a one-trick pony, right? So you practice day and night with just a few patterns, and yeah, you might master those in a couple of months or years, depending on how much time you put into it. The better approach to me is focusing constantly on being relaxed and being able to make small hand and finger movements, right? So if you always practice, big movements, that might sound, and it does sound super cool, so it's a good thing. But if you always do that, then chances are you're never going to be able to do that, right? Because those are like two polar opposite kind of techniques. So what you want to do, if you also want to be able to move your fingers fast, is to spend a little bit practicing time where you totally focus on small finger movements, super relaxed, because you can never develop a control technique if you tense up, and it's very easy to tense up. So you gotta be relaxed, and you gotta be relaxed in your whole body, because it's pretty hard to be relaxed in your hands and arm if you're tensed up in the rest of your body, right? It doesn't work that way, so just relax. And minimize your movement. You should actually not really be able to see my movements. The right hand movements should be super small. And while doing that, you're gonna realize that, hey, I can minimize my movement if I cheat a little bit when alternate picking, and I can try economy picking. There are certain situations where you don't want to sort of traverse the string in a big movement. You can do it in a small movement if you break the down, up, and down, up pattern. And all sorts of insights are going to hit you if you focus on being relaxed and making small movements. So that's the best general answer I can give you. And of course the haircut matters. It's important. Exactly, light fret fingers. That would be, I guess, a way to describe fingers that are relaxed. Exactly, Scott. That's a very good saying there. Speed is the byproduct of accuracy. It doesn't have to be that way, but it should be that way. When it isn't that way, that's usually when you'll see these one-trick ponies who can tense up and play just a few patterns very fast, but they have no means of improvising in and out of those patterns. And it's kind of boring because that technique isn't going to take you anywhere. It's just you're going to be within that box. You can play those 3 licks in an awesome way while you tense up, and then you can't do anything else with it. Exactly. So playing lightly or relaxed, to me, yeah, it's the advantages are actually probably too many to describe, and definitely building speed and being in control when playing up to tempo or playing fast, all of that. And just preventing injuries, that's not a small thing. There are lots of aspiring guitarists and even professional musicians who've had to stop because of injuries, playing related injuries. So I'm not speaking about a car accident, I'm speaking about stuff you can get from just tensing up and practicing and playing for a long time. So actually, if you ask me, there's no other way to do it than being totally relaxed and having light fingers. That's the only way you can do it in the long run, because otherwise something is going to break. May it be your inspiration or your body. It doesn't really matter. You need to be super light. So Andrew C., why do you want to be a one-trick pony? Okay, so taking a lick and developing different phrases from it. Cool, that's a good question there. I'd say, yeah, for sure. That's how I would go about improvising in general. Just gonna grab myself a little bit of energy sugar here. Oops. So if you have like a pattern, what am I gonna... Well, just this kind of basic thing. 5, 7, 5, 7. 5, hammer on, pull up, pick. So on the G string, right? I mean, just this is a good example of... you you can either just play it the way it is, and then it becomes something else, or you can like do some variations where you just do this kind of drill and then occasionally hit the low or the D string there, and you can just use it as your foundation and move things around, and just when it suits you technically, or you can break the pattern a little bit and then return into it. So for sure, just having like very small patterns and phrases that are your building blocks, this is the way to go about being able to improvise faster runs. And also just, you can do the same, but for melodies as well, right? Can still be like a foundation for that as well. So Andrew C says, it's better to be a one-trick pony than a no-trick pony. And I disagree with you, because if you're a one-trick pony, it means you spend a lot of time, you wasted a lot of time on that stuff. So if you're a no-trick pony, at least you haven't spent the time on just developing one trick. So if you're a no-trick pony, then you can sort of make wiser decisions from scratch. So I beg to disagree. I beg to differ. Is that how you say it? So I'm playing a ton of thrash metal to begin, and it's been tough to get out of the large movement and hand picking and subsequent fretting habits. Whoa, can't even. So yeah, but we have to make a difference there between, it's all a matter of whether you can make a conscious choice about how to practice. If you're not aware of this, and you've developed a technique that has some good stuff in it, but might also have some bad habits, that's pretty much how it is for everybody. Very few are fortunate to get the perfect instructions in the beginning of their practicing career. I just have to put a shameless plug here. If you do want that, you should join my email course, which is free. And if you want to get this stuff right from scratch, then you have the link there in the description. It's the last link. But anyhow, if you haven't gotten it right from scratch, which is how it is for most people, then, that's fine as well. As long as you had fun and you developed some kind of musicality there, it doesn't matter if you're a bit tense up. You can always work on that. I did that. I had to go back and pretty much clean up my entire technique. I had worked on all these techniques, but it was pretty tense, and my muting technique wasn't perfect. There were some hand sync issues basically as a result of me pushing speed. And I still thought that when I started out, I was very conscious about not playing too fast, but turns out that wasn't the case. So it's not a super big issue, but if you have the choice to, sort of do it right from the beginning or not to, then yeah, do it right. What have you got to lose? So we have a lot of viewers now. So if you have any questions, feel free to shoot. Thank you. So what's going to happen, Andrew, is you're going to get the question basically what level you're at. And if you want to subscribe to the different levels, like maybe you want both the intermediate or the advanced email, then you can just wait 2 days and click that advanced link later on, and you're going to get both of them. Cool. So, baby oven, are you screaming? Why are you screaming? I hope it's not because you're in the oven. Couldn't help myself. Exactly, Scott. That's some good piece of advice. Oh, and we have a question about the setup. So, you know, I've went through a long journey in terms of my setup, and right now I'm just using the Kemper without any effects at all, or like time-based effects, so no reverb, delay, and for a while there I couldn't even play the Kemper at all. I just needed that totally super organic kind of analog sound. But then I did some experiments with different distortions, stuff like that, and I managed to get something which feels okay. But you know, for some reason I can't play with reverb or delay anymore. I don't know why, but you know, typically it would sound more like. I don't know. I don't even have a good patch right now for reverb, but it's totally clean now. And yeah, that's some good advice from Scott. You can make things more dynamic when thinking of it as words and sentences instead of patterns and notes. Yes, that's a really good one. And maybe you've heard of a technique called call and response. That's pretty much a way to sort of visualize a musical conversation, and it gives you inspiration. So if you have your backing there, which is just chord, and you can sort of visualize the first person saying something, making a statement. Okay, so here's my statement. Like a slightly annoying person speaking there. And then you have this other guy coming in, shutting him off, basically. So if take the conversation from start here. I don't know. So that's just getting some inspiration without, you know, borrowing or taking directly from someone else. It's a way to sort of force yourself to be a bit more creative, and you can definitely just keep on doing that. Developing a good vibrato. I'm still working on that. Part of the secret there is to realize that the vibrato is something you gotta work on and be very conscious about. Because a lot of times, as guitarists, we're so focused on playing that one lick you're trying to get right. So it's like, oh, I'm done, good, yeah, I managed to play all the notes. But to me, that's where the work should start, with a nice note, right? So. So either I tend to see guitarists that don't really think about vibrato at all, or they tend to add like a generic vibrato. So they're thinking like, oh yeah, I know how to do this type of vibrato. I'm good. I don't have to focus on vibrato anymore. I can think about my licks instead, you know, whatever. So yeah, that's the first step, being super conscious about it, and spend an equal amount of time figuring out what kind of vibrato suits for whatever you're doing, and of course how you're going to achieve that vibrato. So that goes a long way if you're just more aware about working on the vibrato and aware of the need for work on the vibrato. Again, a lot of people just neglect that, and they think, oh yeah, you know, I played all the notes correctly, I'm done, and then I add that generic vibrato and it's good. But if you want to get a good vibrato, you have to consciously think about it all the time. Because the reason being, there isn't like one good way of doing it. Just like a good technique, a good vibrato is one that works with whatever you're attempting to play, right? So it's not about developing a good vibrato. It's about having a suitable vibrato vocabulary for the different situations you're playing in, okay? So that means sometimes you're gonna have to like be kind of subtle. That wasn't, let's try again. I don't know, most of the time I prefer it like a wider vibrato, right? But there are definitely situations where, like for instance, if you're recording some harmonies and you might not want each harmony to have like a wide vibrato because they tend to collide with each other, then you might just add a little bit of vibrato in order to counter the guitar's native tuning problems, because the guitar is never really in tune. So you have to, if you're sustaining a note, then most of the time you have to add vibrato, otherwise it's going to sound like shit after a while, right? So we want the minimum of vibrato there, and we want it to be even. That's also a big issue. Some people, can't decide whether they want to do that or something in between. So it gets, I'm just exaggerating that. And that goes down to technique, right? You have to spend some time working on an even movement. And all of these things, when you put that together, that's when you can start really working towards a good vibrato. So I think the topic is a lot bigger than a lot of people realize. It's not just a matter of developing one cool vibrato. It's about having a vocabulary of different vibratos that work in different situations, right? If you're playing metal, you might want to go to the extreme and really do like that Zakk Wylde kind of Marty Friedman vibrato that spans over like a whole step or more. Ooh, my favorite acts. That's a tough question. That's why I have several of them. They're all good at what they do. This is probably one of my favorite guitars. It is slightly unstable when I open the window and do stuff like that. So if it weren't for that, it would definitely be my number one. It's definitely my number one in terms of playability versus sound. I think that's a very good balance. Sometimes you have I have a Parker guitar there, the Nightfly, with the bent thing there. And it has amazing playability, but it's like an all maple guitar with a graphite fretboard. So sound is, And then I have that EVH, the purple guitar. I really like that one. That's like an Indonesian Wolfgang standard. It's not extremely expensive, but it's really, I like the neck profile, which is kind of narrow here, which I like, and it really fits your hand. Oh, they're all different. I could go on forever. Okay, cool. So I'm going to have to end this chat now before my brain melts. But if you want more of this, then please subscribe to my email course. It is free to join, and you're going to get all my preferred methods of playing the guitar, whether you're starting out like a beginner, intermediate, or advanced. We have 3 levels. So subscribe to that email course, and we're going to send you the option to opt in for any of those levels. So that should be good. I basically hope I'm gonna see you here soon again. If not here on YouTube, then on the GMC website. And yeah, thanks so much for tuning in. This was a killer session. Thanks to your awesome questions, feedback, and statements, I should say, because I wasn't the only one teaching here, and I really like that. So have a good one. See ya. Cheers.